Hi. Welcome back to the next edition of Learning the Cards. Today we're going to be talking about the Empress. And if you remember yesterday, we talked about the High Priestess. And the High Priestess is one of the two feminine cards that are in the Major Arcana. I'm going to take my glasses off so you can see me. The Empress is the other one. So we talked about the High Priestess yesterday. Today we're going to talk about the Empress. I just want to start out by giving you guys the mantra for the High Priestess. The mantra for the Empress. All great things will grow in time. The patience required is yours and mine. Like a baby in the mother's womb, you don't want your ideas to be birthed too soon. So let's talk a little bit about the Empress. As usual, I want to start out by talking about the symbolism, and I'm going to bounce around a little bit because this card is a little bit, it's a little bit more complex than the High Priestess. So I'm going to put the card up to the screen so that you guys can look at the card while I'm talking about the symbolism. Okay, so to start out here, I want to just point out a few things to you. The thing about the Empress is she is the Earth Mother. She is considered the fertility goddess. She is usually equated with the goddess Demeter, who is known as the goddess of abundance. So if you notice, if we look at this card versus the High Priestess, you'll notice that our Empress is a little bit more of a fuller figured image. She's a fuller figured lady. And a lot of people actually interpret this, and if you look at other Empress cards from other decks, you'll notice a lot of them depict the Empress as being pregnant, which goes right along with her being a fertility goddess and this being a card of abundance and a card of fertility. So so she's a little bit of a fuller figured person there on the card. And this can represent abundance. This can represent, and like I said, on some decks as a pregnancy. I want to point out her, as we go right down from top to bottom here, we'll just go right down the card, her scepter. Okay, so the scepter is an image that is often associated with being in charge, being, the leader, the person in charge, royalty, right? So that's her scepter, and if you notice on the top of her scepter, you'll see a round ball, and that round ball represents the earth, and it's a more of a feminine scepter, which is in contrast to, and we're going to talk about the Emperor card tomorrow, but I just want to show you the Emperor's scepter so that you can see the difference between the two. And if you look at the Emperor's scepter, it's much more masculine than the Empress. So here's the Emperor, and then here's the Empress. And you can see hers is a much more feminine scepter. We'll talk a little bit more about the Emperor tomorrow, but for now, just sort of make a note of that. This card is a feminine card. It's got a feminine energy to it. As we move right along through the card, she is wearing a crown of stars with a fern. I'll get it a little closer here so you can see. A crown of stars with a fern below it. And if you notice the stars on her crown, there are 12 of them. There are 12 stars, there are 12 zodiac, there are 12 months, there are 12 hours. This is significant because this ties her to Earth, ties her to the universe, ties her to functioning. This is everything that we have going on is going through in 12s. The 12 zodiac, the 12 months, the 12 hours. She's got the 12 stars. Additionally, the crown, just like the scepter, is it signifies rulership and authority. The crown itself is actually symbolically in this image is a wedding ring between the universe and Earth, and this ties into her being an Earth goddess. This ties into her being the fertility goddess for Earth. So moving right down through, you'll see she has a lovely white gown on, and if you notice on her gown is some fruit. Those are pomegranates, and we talked about pomegranates yesterday, if you remember. The pomegranates are on the high priestess card on the back of the shroud behind her back. And we talked yesterday about pomegranates being associated with Persephone, who was the daughter of Demeter. And I had mentioned Demeter just a couple minutes ago. Demeter was the goddess of fertility. And the story with Demeter and Persephone is that Persephone went to the underworld and she ate a pomegranate, and that act of eating that pomegranate required her to return to the underground every year. And this is the mythology surrounding seasons, right? So winter comes, Persephone goes underground. So the thing about the fertility goddess Demeter that can be associated with this card as well is that the earth is, the thing about Demeter is that not only was Demeter the goddess of fertility, she was giving life, but she was also withholding life in anger. When Persephone would go to the underworld for her stint of time, winter would come and Demeter would stop the earth from growing. She would stop the fertility of the earth. So that's sort of the story that goes along with the image on this card. So the pomegranates tie our Empress to Persephone and to Demeter and to that whole, mythological story there. The other thing I want to point out is her robe itself is white. White is a color of purity. And I also want to make a note to you to take a look at the shape of the pomegranates and make a note of the shape on her shield there. That is the symbol for Venus. Venus being the planet of love, the planet of sex, the planet of passion, right? So these are characteristics of Venus. If you notice, the pomegranates are shaped or mimic the shape of the Venus symbol. You can see. Here's a really good example right here. This pomegranate sort of mimics the imagery we have on her shield. So Venus is pretty heavy in this card, and Venus and the pomegranates, fertility, duty, love, sex, the white, purity, passion. And if you notice, she's also sitting on a throne of red with a pillow under her. The pillows are incorporated into the image to give some softness to her, to remind you when you're looking at this card that this is a feminine card. This is a softer card. It's a comfortable card. Red is the color of passion, love, and sexuality, so it goes right along with the imagery of Venus that we have on the card itself. And it also goes along with the idea that this card is about potentially pregnancy and creation and loving and nurturing and passion and fertility and productivity and growth. So that's what that's sort of how the color plays into that. You'll also notice if you look around her and behind her that she is surrounded by a really lush forest. There is a stream, a little waterfall that's coming down off the hill where the trees are. These images here with the forest are representing a connection to earth and life, her connection to earth and life. She is the card that is the creator. She is the fertility goddess. She makes the lush forest. The flowing water is a symbol of perpetual refreshment of life. That is what she does. She is the giver of life. The golden wheat that you see here at the bottom at her feet is another symbol that represents abundance. So, wheat, when you harvest it, this wheat is ready to be harvested. It's in abundance. And so that's how the wheat plays in with that. And we talked about the shield at the bottom there with the symbol of Venus. I just want to point out, Venus is also the god of artists, right? So this plays into our Empress as well, being the fertility goddess and being the goddess of creation. Venus is the god of creation as well. Venus actually helps artists develop their ideas from a police, for example, someone who is a potter. So Venus is the god of a potter, an artist who takes the clay and the idea he has and turns it into a pot. So Venus is a creation planet. It's a planet of creation. So we talked yesterday with this in mind, this whole process of Venus being this planet of the creation. I just want to point out that, like I said, what Venus does, right, is the planet of Venus takes an idea, allows the artist to take his idea and take that raw clay. Who's your raw clay, right? Your raw clay is the magician. The magician is providing the fool with his tools that he needs, the clay that the artist needs. The high priestess, then tells the artist to sit and think and process the idea that he has that the magician gave him. The Empress is the card that allows the artist to bring the idea and using those tools to bring all of that to fruition. Okay, so while the magician is the primal spark, the idea that is made a reality for the person you're reading for, the high priestess becomes the one who gives the idea time and space to decide on a form and to grow and to sort of turn into something real. The Empress then becomes the womb or the nursery where those ideas and those projects grow to a particular level of maturity. So a couple keywords that you guys can put on your worksheets would be, mothering, welcoming abundance, experiencing senses, responding to nature, creator, patient, loving, giving, devoted, nurturer, fertility, productivity. And then in some cases, depending on the other cards that fall or the question that's asked, it can indicate pregnancy or birth, not necessarily with the person you're reading for, but maybe in the person's family or somewhere close to them. So let's see, what else can we talk about here? Talked about the meter. The High Priestess, so I mentioned that the Empress is one of the feminine cards in the major arcana. The High Priestess is the other one. So these two cards are basically two halves of the female archetype in the major arcana. The High Priestess acts like the incubator, the protective incubator, and the Empress acts like a fertile womb. So you can kind of get an idea of how these two cards work together. The Empress, the High Priestess, gives a safe place for things to develop. The Empress gives a safe place for things to grow and thrive. These two cards are asking you to seek feminine energy, embrace feminine energy. The Empress card, let's talk about this one just by itself. The Empress card can be a reminder to be attentive and patient with new jobs, new kids, new relationships, giving these things time to grow and mature and develop. It's asking you to strengthen your connection to nature, strengthen your connection, get yourself grounded. These are all things, being Mother Earth, being the, the creator, Mother Nature, Mother Earth, whatever you want to call her. She's asking you, just like the High Priestess asks you, she's asking you to be patient. Both of these cards are asking you to be patient. The High Priestess is asking you to pause and think. The Empress is asking you to pause and wait. But at their core, they're both asking you for your patience. Let's see, what else do we have here? Strengthening, this card asks you to strengthen your connection to Earth and the natural world. The Empress is the goddess of nature. She is the goddess of nature. She's the goddess of abundance. So she's asking you, this card is asking you to connect to those things. Let's talk briefly about the reversed. So I hope you guys are understanding as we're going through this, how these reversed cards are not necessarily negative. I know like a lot of people, when they think about a card being reversed, they think it has some sort of negative connotation. And that's not necessarily the case. The reversed cards are just a reversal of the energy. And this is particularly so with the major arcana cards, because the major arcana cards represent a spiritual level. They represent answers to questions that are on an internal level for you, right? So when we see the Empress reversed, what this is telling you is that you need to be aware that you may be smothering, Mother Earth. When you think of the Empress representing maybe a mother who wants to dote on her children always, who's so proud of them, wants to talk about them all the time. When she comes up reversed, you got to be careful you're not smothering the people in your life. You need to pay attention to whether or not you're letting things go in a healthy way. So the other thing about being a mother, right, is as your children grow, when they're babies, they need a lot of attention. They need a lot of, they need picked up, they need fed, they need their diaper changed. They have all these things that they need. And as children grow up, their needs change. And our job as parents changes as well. And we have to be able to make that adjustment, and we have to be able to let our children develop and let our children grow and be okay with the fact that they don't need us as much as they needed us when they were babies. So when you see the Empress in a reversed position, and it's related to the querent, the person that's asked that you're reading for, or if it's related to a parenting question or a family question, that might be kind of what the message is. And this is where your intuition and this is where intuitive reading comes into play. Is you're really going to have to get a feel for the cards on the table. And once we get through the whole deck and we have a good understanding of what the meanings of the individual cards are, I'm going to start doing videos for you guys showing you how to read a layout, how to read a spread, how the cards work together, how the energies can change based on different cards that show up in the different lays. So for now, just know that this card could have a few different indications. It could be a reminder just to be attentive and patient. In the reverse position. It could be an indication that you are smothering someone close to you. It could be an indication that you're struggling with when to let go. You're not understanding that you don't need to be as involved as you are right now, or you need to let something go because it has gone past its point of needing you, or past its point of being valuable to you. It could indicate possessiveness, jealousy. It could indicate impatience, right? So I said a couple minutes ago, these cards, the Empress and the High Priestess, these two cards are asking you to be patient. So if you see either of them in reverse, it could be telling you to be patient, that you are being impatient right now, that you are ungrounded. She is Mother Earth. She is connected to Earth. She is grounded. If it's reversed, it could be an indication that you need to work on getting your feet back on the ground. It could be an indication that you are getting too far away from your roots. And so you are just sort of getting lost out there, and you're not connected to your family, connected to, your roots. You're not connected to Earth. You're not connected to your roots. You're not connected to where you came from and what you're supposed to be doing in this life. It's important to know with the Empress, and this kind of capsulizes the energy of the card, I think, that she is the goddess of nature and the goddess of fertility, right? So it's important to know that plants can die from overwatering just as easily as they can die from neglect. And so when the Empress shows up in the reversed position, that's kind of the energies that you're pulling, that you want to pull from this card, that you want to read from this card. Is the person, depending on the other cards in the lay, is the person overwatering their garden, or are they just not watering their garden at all? Are they, not present? Are they confused? Are they lost? Are they ungrounded? Are they struggling to figure out why they're not successful? These major arcana cards, they don't relate to, everyday stuff like you're not working hard enough at your job, or things of that nature. They relate to the spirit. They relate to you, internally, in your heart and your spirit. And so when one of these cards pops up in a reading, this is about what your spirit is doing, not necessarily what you're doing in your everyday life, right? I don't know if that's making sense to anybody, but you can always let me know in the comments if it doesn't, and I can see if I can explain it better. But so just as an overview, oh, and you know what I didn't do? I didn't read the journey, the Fool's journey, and when the Fool meets the Empress. So in the last video, we met the Fool met the High Priestess, and the High Priestess gave the Fool the scroll, the Torah, and the Fool sat down at her feet by moonlight, read the Torah, and then magically knew what to do. So now we're going to meet the Empress. Continuing his journey, the Fool comes upon a beautiful and mysterious veiled lady enthroned between two pillars and illuminated by the moon. She is the opposite of the magician, quiet where he is loquacious. I'm sorry, I'm reading you the wrong one, aren't I? That was the High Priestess. What did I do with? Oh, give me a minute, I'll find it. I think I didn't print it. Okay, here we go. All right, so here is our card again for you guys to look at. All right, while I read this. Okay, sorry about that. All right, having decided what he will create with the tools, the Fool strides forward, impatient to make his future a full-grown reality. This is when he comes across the Empress. Her hair is gold as wheat, wearing a crown of stars and a white gown dotted with pomegranates. She rests back on her throne, surrounded by an abundance of grain and a lush garden. It is possible that she's pregnant. Kneeling, the Fool relates his story, and she in turn smiles a motherly smile and gently gives him this advice. Like newly planted grain or a newborn babe, a new life, a new relationship, a new creation is fragile. It requires patience and nurturing. It needs love and attention. Only this will bring it to fruition. Understanding at last that his creations will take time to develop, the Fool thanks the Empress and continues on his way. So that is the story of the Fool meeting the Empress. And let me set my phone back down here. Okay. So, for your journals, please let me know if you guys have any questions about the Empress or about any of the stuff that I sort of talked about. Like I said, the Empress is a little bit harder of a card to go through. It's not as clear, at least for me. I find it more of a card that I struggle with a little bit, but a card that I nonetheless really, really like. So anyway, I'll leave you guys with the mantra again. All great things will grow in time. The patience required is yours and mine. Like a baby in the mother's womb, you don't want your ideas to be birthed too soon. Have a great night, guys. I'll talk to you later.